Our presentation today. Our presenter is John Miseda. He'll be taking us through advanced lookup and referencing. So we'll keep on listening to John as he presents, and at the end of the session, we are going to have the question and answer, and in case you have anything, you can always note it. The video also will be recorded and will be shared to everyone later after this presentation. So welcome all to this presentation for today, and I wish you good listening and also hoping everyone is going to learn something. So John,
Thank
you
you.
can welcome and you can start now.
So in my presentation today, I'm going to take you through lookup functions. Just to be precise, I'm going to touch actually 3 of them. And actually, there are many lookups function. If, for example, if you look at, if you go on the ribbon on your Excel, when you type on the lookup and references, you can see there are actually quite a number. But today, I'm going to touch on 3. And I hope this will be beneficial because I think they are quite essential. So when you look on your screen, the data which is there is a sales data. And based on this data is what now we are going to do the data manipulation using the lookup functions. That is a Vlookup. I'll also focus on index and match and Xlookup. And thereafter, I'm going to do a recap of the 3 lookups. So when you look at this table, or rather this data, you can see there's the customer, there's the users, the revenue. It's just a typical data which you can find in your day-to-day work environment, and maybe you're supposed to derive some information. So as a good data, the first thing that you can do when you have such a data is to convert it into a table. And the way you do that, you do Control T. If you do Control T, you're going to turn that data into a table. So for the purpose of this presentation, I'd already converted the same data into a table format. And actually, it is represented here. So our first lookup function will be Vlookup. So you have a situation whereby you have the name of the customers, but you want to identify the number of users. Let me clear this so that when you look at, for example, this is a data set, we have the name of the customer here, we have the users here. So sometimes you have a separate Excel that you just want to, from that data set, just for this particular customer, you want to find out the users. So the first thing you'll do, you'll type equals Vlookup. So the lookup value we want to look is this customer's name. That will be a lookup value. And the table array. So I want to make it, it's quite important that you give your table a name. For example, my table, I've given it a name by the name sales sales data. You can see just by typing sales, it brings me the name of the table. That will be the table, the table array. So on Vlookup, we normally use the index, the column index number. So you want on the same data, the index where the name users appear. So what you'll do in this case, you'll use a match function. On this match function, we want to look the name users, and the users are in a lookup array which I had created on the table called sales headers. And I want to return an exact match. So I'll put a comma and choose exact match. You close the bracket. Then after that, we will put another comma because we want an exact match for Vlookup, and I'll choose false. And then I close the bracket. So when you press enter, it gives you under the customer by the name United Fried Chicken, you'll find there are 400 users. If we go back on the same data set, just we copy that and find it and try to find that name on this data set. You'll find United Fried Chicken. This is the customer. There are 400 users. So kindly feel free to interrupt me because I don't want to leave somebody behind if this place I'm not clear. So before I proceed, I think it is important to show you how to come up with those headers. For example, you have a table. It's pretty easy. For example, if you want this column, you just choose the column. You go under the formulas, the name manager. Okay. You choose new. Then you can see you've been indicated there city. It chooses that particular column until the end, and you say, okay, so you'll find under your name manager, we have city. And the headers column, I just did the same. I just choose that row. Okay. I went to the name manager and I did the same. So you can see there's the sales data headers under my name manager. This is very important, especially when you're doing data manipulation, because it makes it easier and somebody is able to follow your formulas. It makes your work pretty clean and easy to follow. So back to Vlookup. So we've been able to identify that this customer, under this customer, there are those number of users. So if you want now to get for the rest of these customer, it's good that you now you lock. You ensure now the rows are moving, but the column is static. So how do you do that? The control function, F4 again. So it's sad that the $ is before letter B, that's the column. Now, I think our formula now is good to go. So if now I drag it down, sorry. You also have to lock E5. So once you drag your formula down, you'll be able to pick up the users of the sales data set. That's how you use the Vlookup function. So I'll move on to the next lookup function, not unless somebody has a question. And match is quite versatile, it has been there before. It's only that many people haven't known how to go about it, but it works pretty well. So in this particular situation, we want the month under which this particular customer appeared. So we are going to use index and match. So for index and match, it's sort of a nested kind of a formula whereby we have match function and index. So we are merging. So the first thing is we'll start with the match function. So what are we trying to match? We are trying to look at, this will be our lookup value. And this lookup value, where is it contained? It's contained on our data under the customer. Under the customer, and we want an exact match of the same. So we'll put a 0 and close the bracket. So we have a figure there, which is number 8. If you go back on the sales data, when you search for that customer on the sales data, you'll find that this particular customer is on row 8. That's what a match function basically does. But now, under this row 8, we want a particular column for the month, because we are interested on the month. And now that's where now we introduce an index function. We type an index. We're interested now on the month. So we try and paste the month. I'd already created this as I'd shown you how to go about creating those names. You put a comma, and then now you close the entire formula. So when you click enter, you see that this particular customer, the month that he appears in the month of January. So when we go back to the same data set, you see Trade Federation, actually the month it's appearing is in January. So index and match is pretty the same. Is just it depends on somebody which one he prefers, but all these 3 formulas, like, they work actually the same. So it is good now to lock a formula. For example, we'll have to lock this and ensure that the rows are the ones which are flexible, but the column is static. So the $ has to be before P, that's the column. So when we drag, you'll find actually it brings actually how these customers and the month that they appear. So if you want, for example, to confirm actually this is the case, the .grill customer, you can copy, go back to the same database and try to locate this particular customer and you'll find there she is or he is, and the month is July. If you go back, that is the month July. So that's how you use index and match. It's quite easy and very straightforward. So over to my next formula, which is Xlookup. Actually, it's my favorite, but it depends on which version of Excel you are using. Those who are using Microsoft Office 365 are able to enjoy, for example, Xlookup. So let's see how now Xlookups do function. Let me clear the contents. Sorry for that. So we have an address, and just a moment. So we want to return the name of the customer under this particular address. If you look at our sales data, we have the customer and we have an address here. So you have a situation whereby you have an address and you want to return that particular address. You want to map it. So sorry for that. So what you do under Xlookup, it's quite easy. Let me clear the contents. Clear contents. Here we want the customer. So the first thing, you'll do an equal sign, Xlookup. The value you want to look is this, the address. Lookup array where the address is. Type address if you had already named it on the table. Okay. Put a comma. What do you want to return? Which array? We are interested in the customer. Then if, for example, you don't find anything in return, you can just type not available. And you close your brackets. So you find, for example, Jefferson Alley, this street, the address is mapped to this customer. If you drag your formula down, you will be able to get each customer and their addresses, or rather the customer who is related to the addresses which are indicated there. So you can see Xlookup is quite easy. It's just for you to know the syntax and what to look for and which array to return. And actually, you'll be able to do it. So in my next presentation, I'm just going to do a recap of the three formulas so that you see that actually they do pretty much the same thing. So let me clear the contents. So we are interested in the salesperson, and we have the customer. So if we use Xlookup, we'll type Xlookup. What is the lookup value? We want to look at this customer, this particular customer. Okay. The lookup array, this particular customer is under the customer column. on our table, okay? And say we want to return we're interested in getting the salesperson. So type the salesperson. Then if there's nothing, you not available, then you close the bracket. You find the customer name, petrol oil company. The salesperson under that particular company is called Gilman. The same if we use the Vlookup, it's just pretty easy. You just do Vlookup. Okay. So which lookup value are we interested in? It is this particular customer. Okay. The table array to be our sales data. Okay. Then on this instance, we introduce the match function because we're interested in the column, the index column. So we'll do the match. So what are we trying to match? We're trying to match the salesperson. Okay. The salesperson is under the lookup array. In this case will be the sales headers. Data sales headers, okay. And we want an exact match. Close the bracket, comma, we want exact match. Close the bracket. So if you click on return, Vlookup should give you the same answer as the Xlookup. Finally, for index and match, still the same. First of all, it's good just to start with the match function. Match function. So under this match function, we want to match what is the lookup value, this particular customer. This particular customer is under the customer column on our data table. And we want an exact match. Close the bracket. That gives you the position. But here we are interested in the salesperson. So what do we do? This is a nested formula. We introduce now the index. Under the index, we are interested in the salesperson. A comma, and we wrap everything together. And there we are. So as you can see, the three lookups serve pretty much the same function, and you are able to arrive at the same solution. So it depends on your preference and which one you really find quite easy for you to be able to use in your normal day-to-day operation. So John, I don't know if I should now move to the other part of the presentation.
Yes, that is very much clear. So you can proceed, and the members, please, you can be typing your questions the chat box, so that at the end of this presentation, John will have some times to address each question. So please, John, yes, you can proceed.
Thank you for that. So before we move on to the next presentation, it is always advisable to lock these formulas so that, for example, if we drag it the way it is right now, we'll experience we'll experience some errors. See, for example, for the Vlookup, and also for the index and match. Index and match works quite okay. But for the Vlookup, you'll find there's some error. And the pretty reason, or the reason is we really need to lock. We need to lock this value here over here because it remains static. So how do you do that? Function F4. Then you lock everything. So once you drag it, then it becomes very much the same. So these formulas, they work actually the same. It depends on your preference, and but at the end of the day, you'll be able to arrive at a common solution. All right, so let's move on to another interesting feature. And this feature is mostly for those who have Office 365 will be able to enjoy this particular feature. I know at some point in the course of our day-to-day working, we have very many data on different Excel workbooks or sheets. And at some point, you are required to have one complete Excel which is merged. So I'll give an example on the same. So we have sales data. You find you have a data like that. There's a continuation of similar data on another workbook, on the worksheet. The same, another worksheet, and all these data are the same, and you are required to have one merged data. So what are you going to do? Most of the cases, people will just try copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. But you can imagine if you have maybe 100 worksheets of a similar data and you're supposed to merge them, that will be quite a laborious task. And it is prone to errors. So as a good data analyst or a good maybe, for example, an accountant or whoever who is interacting with the data, the best way to go about it is to use a VStack function. A VStack function basically will help us combine this data, and it's quite dynamic. So what you'll do is you'll just write VStack equal VStack. Then you go to the first data, where the first data starts, and you copy, you select the entire data set, then you put a comma, then you move to the next data set, you do the same thing, and another data set. Just copy down, select, and then you close. So when you click a return, you find that actually whatever data you had in this worksheet and this worksheet, together this worksheet have been combined into now this particular worksheet. So everything is brought together there. It's very easy, especially if you're working with a large data set, which can be boring, and you can even make mistakes if you're not careful. So that is the best way to merge data. But remember that the columns have to be the same. For example, in this schedule, you have to have if it is 7 columns, ensure that you have 7 columns for each each data set, so that now when you combine, everything is aligned together. So still under the Vlookup function, I want to bring another important formula that you can use also to manipulate this particular data set. For example, you can choose the columns that you are interested in. You'll just write choose calls, and this will be our data. This will be our array. And for example, you want column. You want maybe column 1, 2, and 3. You will now introduce a curly bracket, then type 1, 2, and comma, and 3. Then close with the curly bracket, and then wrap it up. So once you do that, you see that you'll be able to select the columns that you are interested in on the same data set. So you can still play around with the same data and just say that you want to, for example, you can introduce still a sort function. Okay, you want to sort. This is our array. Okay, and maybe let's say you want to which column do you want to sort? Let's say column 1. Write 1. And which order, if you want it on ascending or descending, whichever way you choose. Let's choose descending. Close the bracket. You find that the same data has been sorted for you. So there, this particular, you can actually play along with that with those actually the VStack, the choose calls. Also choose rows, those are still functions under the lookups, which you can actually use to play around with the data in the way that you find fit. So here you can, because these are revenue, you can just, for it to look at least okay, you can just make it like that, and then there you go. That's how you go about manipulating the data. You can find our header was sorted to go down. Actually, this was meant to be our header. So, pretty much very nice. But you'll find if you don't have the current version of the Office 365, you'll not be able to enjoy such functions. Moving forward, this is where now the crux of the matters is the filter function. Filter function is quite a very robust function. If you know how to go about it, you can actually derive the information that you want from a big, you can actually pull the database. But once you know how to operate the syntax, you'll be good to go. We'll still use the same database. Let me clear the contents. We'll still use the same database, but we want to filter. And on this case, we have parameters whereby we want to choose from the main database, and this is the original database. We've called it data sales data. Sort of this data is quite a big one, but sometimes you're confronted with a situation whereby you just want a specific information. For example, you might be asked, you want to pull information whereby the size is, for example, small. out of this database. So that's where now the filter function really comes in handy. So what you do is, for example, we want a situation where the size is small from that database. Filter function. So our array will be the sales data. So it's quite important. Now from here, sales data, where is the size included in the sales data? So when you go back to that sales data, you find the size is here. So if you choose that column till the end, so we want a situation whereby the data is equal. For example, is equal to small. Okay. And if nothing is available, you can say not available. You press enter, there you have. So you find the data has sorted a situation whereby out of the data, it has pulled where the size is small. On another occasion, you might be confronted to have, like, you have two variables. You want a situation whereby the size is small, but the revenue is, for example, more than 30,000. How do you go about that? So filter function is still quite versatile. It's able to do that. You only just have to know the syntax on or how how to go about the formula itself. So what you'll do in that particular case, we already have a situation whereby the size is equals to small, but we also want a situation whereby in as much the size is small, but the revenue is more than, for example, 30,000. So it's quite easy. You'll first of all put into brackets the first part of the formula, which indicates that the cell size is equal to small. Okay. And in Excel, if you are using AND, so the function that you'll use here is a multiplication. So we'll put a multiplication, and then the other part of the formula is we want a situation whereby we sell and sales. We want sales data. Okay. Square bracket, insert revenue greater. So if you click return, you'll see under our data set we have that maybe the size is you can edit there. You can say the size is medium, and the revenue is equal more than 30. You'll see there that actually you have the sales revenue which is equal or more than 30,000, and the size is medium, and you have all the rest of the data. So another way is you can be confronted that, okay, you want a situation whereby the size is medium, greater or equal to 30,000. So the only thing here when you're confronted with OR, you just have to, sorry about that, you just have to put a plus. You put a plus instead of a multiplication sign. So once you click, you'll see actually the data set has changed. We have a situation where the size data is what is medium, and or a situation whereby the revenue is greater than 30,000. So that's how to go about the filter function. It's quite it just depends on what you're really looking for. You can do maybe a last example. We can clear that and see. You want a situation whereby you want all the revenues which were generated in the month of, for example, February, and 20,000. So it's much easier. You just use the filter function. Say filter, the array is your sales data. Okay. So what do you want to include? The sales data. Sorry. The sales data. Open this. You want a situation whereby the revenue is, for example, greater than 50,000. Or it's good to reference here. Okay. So remember, if you're having two parameters, is first of all, it's good to first of all enclose the first one, and then put a multiplication sign, and you use a multiplication sign. Then you open again the sales a bracket, still under the sales data. Under the month, we say the month is, for example, January. Then you close the bracket. So, and if they don't find then you close the bracket. So there we are. So you see on this particular data set, we have a situation whereby the revenue is greater, those revenues for a particular month, for example, for January. So if you change here, for example, 50,000, you find the database also changes. So that's the beauty of actually using filter function. The most important thing to note or to remember is that if you are using two sets, remember to always enclose them into a bracket. If you have two sets of parameters, and if you want a situation from revenue and the month, but if you have a situation whereby you want revenue is greater, for example, than 50,000, or the month is the month of January, remember you just have to change here and indicate that when you use an addition sign, that indicates that particular sales revenue is greater than 50,000, or the month is equal to January. So if you click enter, you'll actually get that. So we have a situation where the revenues are more than 50,000, or the month is January. So you'll see February will spill here because of the reason why the revenue is more than 50,000. So you have to be very careful on what exactly you want when you're using the or and functions in the filter function. I don't want to eat into the question and answers session, so I'll wrap it at that.
Okay, thank you very much, John. For sure, it has been a very nice and insightful presentation. And I hope everyone has learned something. So members, now, in case you have any question from today's presentation, that is starting from the Vlookup, those are the lookups function and the filter, VStack, all the